Russell T Davies has had a mixed portfolio of season finales. Often his weakness is the second part and finding a solid conclusion. However, last year's penultimate episode, The Legend of Ruby Sunday, was nothing but an exposition dump until we got the random Sutekh reveal at the end, which I was originally hyped for as a classic Doctor Who fan, but then critically I realised it wasn't for the best of the show. So, this time, has Russell got it right? Does Wishworld serve as a worthy setup episode for next week's finale? Let's find out. We open the episode with this scene set in Bavaria, a location I wasn't expecting to see, but it fits in with a more fairy tale and fantasy route Russell has taken with the show since his return. Archie Panjabi is fantastic as Varani. I especially love her calling the child's name Terrible and how she just ruthlessly disposes of his family once she's gotten a hold of the child. The whole notion of the child being the seventh son of the seventh son was a nice addition, calling back to how the power of coincidence has birthed most of these gods, such as Maestro with the piano chord and Lux with the light coming down from the moon. This is when we now see the result of what the Rani has done, as the Doctor and Belinda wake up together in bed. This leaves some questions as what happened to the version of the Doctor and Belinda in the TARDIS at the end of the last episode with the doors blowing off. The addition of Poppy from Space Babies also has me worried that the story is going to become increasingly relevant to the lore of the show, and I really hope she isn't going to be revealed to be the Doctor's actual daughter and Susan's mother. This whole alternative world gave me straight callbacks to Lie of the Land from Series 10, with its pure 1984 vibes. There were even callbacks to human nature with how entrenched the Doctor was in this narrative. We especially see this when he opens the door and first interacts with Ruby. Ruby's role in this story echoed Martha's role in human nature, as the only character aware of the predicament the Doctor was in. The use of the slips, with mugs breaking whenever someone expresses doubt, was brilliantly eerie, painting how this world doesn't make sense and gives off the feeling of a dream, which is essentially what this world is. It's just built off the dreams of Conrad. I was at first skeptical when Conrad showed up, but I thought his role in this story made more sense, and I preferred him here than in Lucky Day. Conrad serving as a conduit so this world can exist, and is much more of a chess piece for the Rani rather than an equal. His thoughts generate the ideas in this world, which gives us an exploration of his ideology and how flawed and inconsistent it is. Hence the slips and the errors present throughout this story. It was nice to find out that this world having all these inconsistencies is the entire point of this world, which further shows how the Rani views Conrad as just a pawn in her game. Mrs. Flood, on the other hand, doesn't really feel as if she's needed. Last week, I gave Russell the benefit of the doubt that the bi-generation would lead to either a good dynamic or some conflict between the two Ranis. However, all Mrs. Flood does is make a ham sandwich and cosplay as a police officer. I don't feel like Mrs. Flood is entirely relevant to the narrative anymore unless she betrays the Rani next week. That being said, Anita Dobson is brilliant and eats up every scene she is in, so I am happy to still have Mrs. Flood here just to get more Anita Dobson. The costume and set design during the scene at Unit was on top form here. The Unified Insurance team was a brilliant joke, and Kate looks like a completely different character here. And also the Links being replaced by a box was another great comedic result of Conrad's world. While I find all these scenes great, it doesn't really push the plot along and just serves as world building for a world which is going to be around for just 45 minutes before we destroy it. And the whole feeling of this episode is more of a pilot for a 6-part series. The production value, acting, and the writing is all good here, but there isn't really a purpose for it for the overall plot and narrative of the series. I was originally thinking that Ruby was going to be the one to wake the Doctor up, kind of like Martha back in Human Nature, I do like the callback to 73 Yards and that alternative timeline being an explanation of how Ruby is sort of desynchronized to this world. However, Ruby doesn't really have any impact on the plot. Shirley and the other disabled people of the world being essentially ignored and not even thought about by Conrad was brutally scary, and I did like the scenes in their sort of camp where they band together and tell stories. Again, this episode is a much stronger exploration of Conrad's ideology than Lucky Day was. While Millie Gibson was great, and I did like the scenes with Ruby, albeit not entirely relevant to the plot, I felt Belinda was underutilized again. I do really like Vardu in the role, but Belinda has been absent in so many episodes of this season, and her character hasn't gotten any depth other than get me home. She spends pretty much the whole episode in this kitchen, and I find her getting overshadowed by Ruby on a performance scale and as a character, and Ruby has only appeared in 2 episodes this season. While I thought Ruby was going to be the one to wake up the Doctor, she isn't, and we have this scene with Rogue, which was a nice surprise, I guess, but I'm really confused as to why or how he's here. Jonathan Groff is great, and I do really want to see him back. However, this scene was very jarring. The green screen is awful. It feels like Groff is sat in his bedroom filming this, and I thought with the Disney budget, we've passed the days of cheesy Doctor Who having a cheesy budget, but here we are with random character showing up randomly with no explanation on a very bad green screen, and yet, thanks to Rogue, the Doctor is able to see how nonsensical and broken this world is, which leads to Belinda reporting him for expressing doubt. I liked this very 1984 style arrest scene as Anita Dobson eats up the scenery, and this then leads us to the confrontation between the Doctor and the Rani. It was here where my investment into the episode started to dwindle, as it's the point in the episode where the villain has to explain everything. Also, quick comment, why are the robots from last episode here? Am I supposed to believe the Rani just stole them from the song contest? Like, they have no justification whatsoever, they don't do anything, and it just irks me. The budget was stretched so much last week that we now need to recycle the costumes for the season finale. If not for Archie Punjabi's performance, I think I would have really disliked this exposition scene. I don't really like it anyway, but her delivery is just so perfect. And no, Russell, just because you insert a "this isn't just exposition" line doesn't make it okay. Doesn't make it okay to spend a quarter of the runtime of this episode explaining Rani's plan. And narratively, I'm perfectly fine with Rani's plan. I'm perfectly fine with how all the pieces of the season have come together, including the Vindicator. However, there needs to be a better way to deliver this information. I also do think that this is a plan that works with Rani. I know a lot of people have said she could have just been the Master, but I'm a bit bored of using the Master whenever we want a humanoid villain or someone that's not a CGI monster or someone covered in prosthetics. And I'm very happy to get more Time Lord villains, as long as they're distinguished enough from Time Lords we already have, like the Master. And I think the Rani is here. She is distinguished. This might just be my admiration for Anita Dobson and Archie Punjabi, but so far they've been my favourite villains since the Toymaker back in the 60th anniversary, and he was my favourite villain since Missy all the way back in series 10. So I do think the Rani is justified to be here. My problem is how Russell has weaved these classic villains into the narrative, especially as this is supposed to be a starting point for the Disney Plus crowd, and his reliance on flashbacks is getting really annoying. And do we really need to canonize dimensions and time? No, we don't, Russell. We really don't. Please don't. Also, Russell has already proved that he can handle bringing old villains back in a way that satisfies old fans and new fans of Doctor Who, as he did it 3 times. In 2005, we got introduced to the Daleks as if they were a new villain for the viewer, and they came with additional context with their role during the Time War, which still gave classic Who fans something new to gain from these Dalek stories. How are new viewers, or even viewers of just New Who, going to feel about these villains? I will acknowledge that resetting to season 1 isn't really anything to do with Russell, and I'm sure he would have wanted this to be series 14 and series 15 of New Who. But I am worried his approach has probably turned off a lot of new viewers, as these stories really require you to have access to the backlog of New Who and Classic Who to fully understand and enjoy. I haven't even gotten onto the Omega mention, which genuinely made me roll my eyes. How is anyone who's not a super fan going to react to this reveal? Omega has never been mentioned in the modern era of Doctor Who, and his last appearance was in 1983. His last mention was during the 7th Doctor's era. I'm not going to lay into the Omega reveal that much, as I'm pretty confident he's not even going to appear next week. The voice we hear from the Underverse is archived Big Finish audio, meaning they haven't even hired a voice actor for Omega. I am completely fine with us exploring more Time Lord lore, but actually reintroduce the characters and themes to the audience instead of just relying on fan jerk reveals. Well, I was enjoying that until we got to the part where we need to escalate the plot to the end of the universe because it's a finale. And all finales need to show how the universe is ending for some reason. What happened to getting finales like World Enough and Time, where the stakes are about our characters and not the Earth or the whole universe for that matter? So, what's the grade? This episode started off strong, with some great callbacks to previous stories like The Lie of the Land and Human Nature / The Family of Blood. However, the last 10 minutes really make the whole thing feel pointless. Ruby's side story is pointless and doesn't affect the plot. Mrs. Flood doesn't feel needed, and the ending is just a complete exposition dump. However, the performances are key here, especially Archie Panjabi as Virani, and Murray Gold's music is at its peak. Will the payoff be worth it though? I guess we'll just have to find out. I give Wishworld a B-.